Testing. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone's listening, just put a one in the chat. Let me know that you can hear me. Yeah, put a one in the chat if you can hear me. Okay, you guys can hear me. So, welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. I'm new to StreamYard, so this is a little bit different than Zoom. So, this is my first time ever doing this on StreamYards. But welcome back to the Black Brain Trust again. This is episode 740, Space and Technology. We're going to get into some Africans in space, as well as Black men in tech, Black tech startups. And then we're going to rock and roll and get up out of here, man. Let me give a shout out to some of the people I see in the comment section in the chat. Wacky World of O, what's going on, old man? The original old man. Ryle, peace. Ron F, peace. Alonzo Hall, peace. Yeah, so let's get started, man. If anybody wants to come up, just let me know. Just say something in the chat, and I'll drop the link down there for you. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, let me know if you can see the screen. Zoom this in again. All right, first item on the agenda. The first satellites launched by Uganda and Zimbabwe aim to improve life on the ground. So this is from NPR. When Uganda's very first satellite was launched into space last week on November 7th, Bonnie O'Mara, the lead engineer on the satellite development team, was filled with emotion. Quote, I was watching it on TV together with my honorable minister for science, technology, and innovation, he says. It was really amazing, and we hugged each other To see my baby take off from the ground, headed for the International Space Station, it's really a great feeling of my life. The satellite developed by Omara and his team, named Pearl Africa Sat 1, was launched aboard a Northrop Grumman Cygnus resupply spacecraft, which lifted off from NASA's Wallops Flight Facility in Virginia. In addition, the rocket was also carrying ZimSat-1, Zimbabwe's first satellite. Both satellites were developed through the Joint Global Multi-Nation Birds Project 5, Birds 5, in collaboration with the Kyushu Institute of Technology in Japan. Omara, when asked about collaborating with engineers from Zimbabwe and Japan, says, "I feel really great to work with our neighbors in Africa, to have a team of engineers and great men joining hands to work together towards attaining a common goal." Uganda and Zimbabwe join an ever-growing number of African countries that are building up their space technology capabilities. To date, 52 satellites have been launched by 14 African countries, including the 2 launched last week. The satellites, which have by now reached the International Space Station, are set to be deployed over the next few weeks, depending upon environmental conditions. It is a historic moment for the 2 countries, who now hope the data collected by the satellites will help improve life on the ground. Many of the modern devices we use every day function because of satellite technology, something that's often taken for granted. Quote, "Space technologies are essentially the backbone of the modern economy," says Kwaku Suma, founder of Space Hubs Africa, a service company that helps stimulate the African space ecosystem. You sometimes don't even know that you're using them. But for example, if you're using Google Maps or even things like Zoom or broadband communication, that's all powered by satellite services. Suma and Space Hubs Africa were not involved in the development of the recently launched satellites. However, Uganda and Zimbabwe satellites won't be providing wireless services to anyone. Instead, they've been developed for the purposes of Earth observation. Quote, "The satellites have a multispectral camera, which allows the satellite to essentially take pictures of the Earth," says Suma. "Multispectral cameras can take pictures that capture information from wavelengths of light not visible to the human eye. What this does is provide data that can help determine the health of the land for the agricultural sector, among other things." Omara says the multispectral camera will be used to quote, "perform analysis of water quality, land use cover, and soil fertility. That information will be provided to citizens so that they can make the best use of the natural resources in their countries. But there are still possibilities to do even more with the satellites." Suma says that one of the main purposes of the satellite Ghana launched in 2019 was to monitor illegal mining that was occurring in the north of Ghana. And all of those capabilities are made possible by a satellite that only measures 10 centimeters in each direction. They are called CubeSats, and their small size and low cost to develop makes them perfect for first satellites for nations developing their space technology sectors. But don't let their size fool you. While small, only a bit larger than a Rubik's Cube, CubeSats can still pack a big punch. However, there is one downside to CubeSats. Their lifetime of operation is only about 24 to 30 months. So unless Uganda and Zimbabwe commit to building and launching more of these satellites, the benefits will be short-lived. Now, we've covered CubeSats in the past. If you go back to the Brain Trust catalog or the archive, you'll see back in 2018, 2019, we were talking about cube-based satellites. In fact, that's the reason why we even started doing the space and technology section of the Brain Trust, because we ran into these sort of new technologies that were emerging, and we didn't have any idea that this was even being done by Black people. And so we wanted to start covering it. So that's why we even have the space and technology section on the Black Brain Trust. And so It's interesting to see that Africans are actually taking advantage of this at full length. The satellites launched by Uganda and Zimbabwe aren't the first satellites launched by African nations, and they won't be the last. According to Suma, Ethiopia is looking to launch a new satellite, as well as Nigeria and Ghana, all hopeful within the next year. Despite plans for future launches by African nations, Suma is a bit hesitant to suggest bigger things are unquestionably on the way. I'm hoping that these are not just one-off events that are just used for PR, but that there's a sustained momentum that helps lead the charge for Africa to really maximize the use of these new technologies, he says. These are the brothers who actually are engaged in this from Uganda and Zimbabwe. At least with respect to Uganda, Omara believes one thing will help make sure this new foray into space will be sustainable. Quote, a couple of countries have launched their first satellite, or even many, by paying money to other institutions who then give them the satellite, he says. But Uganda is unique in the sense that we participated. We have now got 3 engineers who are fully grounded in the process of developing satellites. Even though the human capital is there to provide sustainable development of satellites, Omara thinks there's still more political and social investment needed before space technologies in Africa can fully mature. Quote, in the field of science and technology on the African continent, we are still limping, he says. The reason is very simple. It's because we do not believe in ourselves. I always tell everyone that we can make it. We have every single resource that we need. The only thing is us believing in ourselves. So we've been talking about this for a while now, quite a few years now. I mean, it's 2023 now. We were talking about this 2019 or something like that. And so, we've lamented about that, space is going to be the new venture, the next venture. When you talk about fourth industrialization, we're also talking about fifth industrialization, that you're talking about cyber connected systems, mining asteroids, rare earth, rare resources, rare minerals on different sort of, clusters of the system, the moon, Mars, different planets, different ways of extracting water and things like that. We've been talking about this for a while. So I think if I was giving myself advice at 18, right, I would definitely go into planetary systems or space, any sort of space program in terms of undergrad. I would definitely look into that. And so you heard him say in the last paragraph, the reason, in the field of science and technology on the African continent, we are still limping, he says. The reason is very simple. It's because we do not believe in ourselves. I always tell everyone that we can make it. We have every single resource that we need. The only thing is us believing in ourselves. This is a problem that's global for Black people. It's not just it's not just in Africa, it's in America too. When you look back through history, Booker T. Washington was very instrumental in this sort of agricultural and mechanics of the vocational schooling. I think that space, planetary systems will be the new vocational schooling. Instead of going to school to get a bachelor's degree in like computer science, you're probably going to end up in community college doing 2 years for like planetary systems or something like that. Building Q-based satellites like these guys did. You have the human capital, like they say, like they're saying. In this picture right here, you see the satellite for Uganda. No bigger than a Nintendo Cube. And so you have the human capital, you have the technology. It's just about the belief that's really holding people back. And I think that we're really shooting ourselves in the foot. We need more investment into innovation hubs in predominantly Black areas in order for something like this to really take off at rapid speed. Usually you're talking about anywhere between 5 and 10 years of development for something like this to take off, at minimum. I think in the Black community, you can do something like this in a 5 to 10 year spurt. Okay, every 2 years, you start to see this sort of maturity and growth. It can be done. We just had something called the Chips and Science Act that was just passed this summer. There is money in there for HBCUs. HBCUs are participating in this, and you'll see later what I'm saying. You need something like this in predominantly Black neighborhoods. You need kids to see people like this doing what they're doing and making that sort of impact, because kids can't be what they can't see. If they don't see Black men, Black people doing things like this, then they don't see any value in it. And so going back to the last paragraph to what he was saying, believing in yourself, Black people need to believe in themselves. He's right about that. That's a global issue. It's not just an African issue. It's a global issue. All right. Hey, what's going on, Q Butter? What's going on, Shonda? Adult Art, what's going on? Red Pill Finance, what's going on? And speaking of Q Butter, you need brothers like Q Butter who are doing exactly what he's doing in the community. One of these days we're gonna have to chop it up, man, and really pick his brain and really go over some of the stuff that he's done. Okay. Because he's really instrumental in what he does. Let me run check Q Butter real quick. All right, let me get to the next item on the agenda. All right, this is from Pathways, but HBCUs do have a smart city competition coming up. Okay, it's in February. So let me just read this off. HBCU communities are thriving ecosystems with emerging talent, strong community relationships, and undervalued infrastructure. Sorry. Let me scroll down. Pathway OZ works to utilize opportunity zones that empower the residents and businesses and community organizations in and around HBCUs. Our mission is to surface opportunities to maximize the untapped talent while creating lasting economic and social impact. The annual HBCU Smart Cities Challenge is our marquee event, which challenges all HBCUs to create a smart city application for their community, leveraging IoT, Internet of Things, Web3, and other smart technology. For event sponsors, this is a unique opportunity to connect with city officials, HBCU students, and community leadership. Okay. Our goal, the untapped talent of HBCUs. The HBCU network consists of 107 colleges and universities. 55 HBCUs are located in opportunity zones with over 14 million people living in the communities. The HBCU Smart City Challenge encourages HBCUs to build a smart city application for their community. The inaugural Smart City Challenge permits HBCU developers, entrepreneurs, designers, and engineers to develop tech solutions that leverage IoT technology. With over 50 HBCU located in opportunity zones, the underutilized communities are primed to leverage their infrastructure, relationships, and immense human talent to build thriving business ecosystems of the future. Our experience in opportunity zone space provide the point of direction guide through the tax benefit and economic opportunities in HBCU communities. And so let me go on that real quick. So it's from February 17th to the 18th next month. It's going to be in Salem, North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And so I'll drop the link in the chat if anybody wants to register up, if you're in that area. Pitch competition, career fair, networking. So yeah, let me drop that in the link. Drop that link in the chat real quick, and then move on to the next item on the agenda. I think that, you know, there's so many dope things happening right now. You got Africans putting satellites into space. You got HBCU undergrads building smart cities as a competition for their own communities and developing tech ecosystems. A lot of dope things happening right now. And, you know, we've been talking about this for the last few years, that this is going to be going down. We talking about this back in 2019 before the pandemic. And a lot of people laughed and they said, you know, Africans can't read. You know, why do we need to worry about these people? You need to be creating these ecosystems now so that you don't get left behind in the next 10 years. This stuff has to happen now. This stuff has to happen now. Let me drop that link in the chat for you guys, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. All right, next item on the agenda is from Bloomberg. Quick takes, powering Nigeria's electrical grid. Let me share my screen real quick. And you all let me know.
The electricity challenge in Nigeria and even the broader Africa is insanely huge. We have more than 100 million Nigerians living in one form of energy poverty or the other. We have more than 600 million Africans have no access to electricity. Our goal is simple: to provide electricity to people that don't have access to power. How can we build a system that could allow people to access power quickly, efficiently, and more importantly, affordably? My name is Olugun Galubanjo, and I'm the CEO of Ready. Ready is a climate tech company that provides clean, reliable, and affordable electricity to communities. The average person on the street is able to access electricity when they need it, anytime and anywhere. So the thinking was that it has to be mobile enough that people should be able to move it around, but simple enough that anybody can use it, and flexible enough that it can power different devices at different times. I was a curious kid. I always wanted to be excellent, so I'm always striving for the best in everything. My mom is a teacher and my dad has an MBA, so everybody just have to go to school. They have like all this educational background and they kind of value education a lot. When I got to Toronto, the different experience was that there's power everywhere. It was like I was just amazed at how I could get stuff done. It's basically like just get more optimized because you can actually do anything at any time. I don't need to worry about power, and I could see my productivity quadruple. I still have friends who still struggle with power even till now. I have family members who struggle with power. I feel I'm obliged to do something in that regard, given my experience. So I was thinking through what's going to be the best way to solve the problem in the most affordable way and the most efficient way. Like I need to build a system that is affordable, that is mobile, and also that does both AC and DC power. I must think differently and I must obviously operate differently. So for us in Ready, what we had to do was to innovate on the business model side while also innovating on the technology side. So in the technology, build the Ready capsule. On the business model, provide the Ready capsule leveraging a rental model that allows the average person to be able to access it. Basically, eliminating the upfront cost barrier that is associated with accessing clean, reliable, and affordable electricity. So like the design was done by one of my friends, the engineering was done by one of my friends, and they were just scrappy, just trying to get stuff done. And when they got it done for me, I was in Toronto then. The guys in Nigeria were giving us all the feedback. They were seeing what we are doing, testing it, and giving us like all those feedback about okay, change this model, add this model, remove this, and all. And yeah, it was. I look back and I feel very grateful and also equally lucky to be able to have those kind of people because without them, I don't think Ready would be where Ready is today because they basically laid all the foundation to make it work. Ready's approach to solving the problem of the electricity sector in Nigeria is to provide electricity to people irrespective of socioeconomic background. We observe that the critical challenge is the financing part, where people need to pay a very expensive upfront cost to even access the system. So our goal is to eliminate that upfront cost entirely by using the rent to use model that we have. So customers just go to the Ready ambassadors and rent the capsule of the Ready ambassadors. The Ready ambassadors take the Ready capsule from the Ready charge station, and these ambassadors will increase their own quality of living because they make money by renting by becoming a Ready ambassadors because they rent the Ready capsules and they're not bounded by contracts. Because what we observed was that the most of the existing companies they have to bind you by a contract and all this kind of stuff, and that automatically just eliminates the whole inequality around like who access. Because at the end of the day, all you just need to access the Ready capsule is just 50 cents and you're good to go. And which is the same money you use in buying Coke and Gala or whatever. Use it to like get the Ready capsule and use it to get energy that power your devices, power your phones, power your laptops, power your TV. Very socially driven with what I do because for me it's more about the people, it's more about the impact because I got where I am today because of a lot of amazing people. And I think the more you are very focused on people and trying to like make sure you kind of increase the quality of life of people, I think it's kind of it's an infinite game because at the end of the day, you're going to be solving it, you're going to get happiness, and they're going to expose you to like more bigger problems. As a company, we are continuously evolving and we are still very new to the game. And we are still serving around 1,500 households and businesses. We think we can do 2, 3 million, even more. I mean, I'm kind of driven by impact. So my goal is to bring smile on people's faces. You see a problem, if you have the resources or the capabilities to address it, throw yourself into it, solve it, bring smile on people's faces, and by default, you are happy.
All right. Yeah, I think we've talked about this last week with Josh Aviv and his Spark Charge startup, and you're seeing the same thing happen on the continent now with Reedy, right? We also talked about Block Power with the brother from Brooklyn, Daniel Beard, as well as our other brother on the West Coast, Paul Francis, with his startup called Kidget. And so everybody's moving into this energy space, this new renewable energy space, rechargeable batteries, renewable sources of power, photovoltaic, as well as wind turbines and things like that. This is starting to take shape right now. We've been saying this for the last few years. We've been bang on the money since 2018, 2017. And so I find it interesting that this video had actually popped up in my feed earlier this morning, and I said, we got to really cover this. And so his product is actually social impact driven. And I think all of the platforms are actually social impact driven. But in Africa, that's actually a very viable, highly sought after product that most people had not really thought of. They probably had an idea that something like that needed to be fulfilled, but he actually met the demand by designing that. And I think that, and it's not just a drop product, right? It's not just a brick that you just plug in. There's actually some software behind this that actually makes this possible. And so I think this is the dope product. I think this, the technology is dope. I like what they're doing over there. That's the main reason why I travel over there every year. A lot of people in here know that I've been going back and forth to the continent at least once or twice a year, if not more. Even before the pandemic, and then during the pandemic, I was going over there. And so I think that you should really be, if you're listening to this, live right now or to the replay, really got to get involved in some of these social impact areas, as well as some of these new emerging technologies. We saw at the onset of this live stream, Africans going into space with these cube-based satellites. We have been talking about this since the inception of the channel. And then you start talking about HBCUs and smart cities. You're getting into the emerging technology aspect of IoT, Internet of Things. We covered micro-transportation. Complex has talked about this ad nauseum. All these things are emerging technologies that people got to get involved in. Black people got to get involved, get at the forefront of the technology, be at the beginning of it, the infancy of it, and really be the ones driving the technology. Okay. Let me get to the next item on the agenda. All right, this is from Biz Journals. I don't know if you guys can see it. What the hell's going on here? Yeah, meet some of Boston's top Black tech founders. Okay, let me run through this real quick. Uncut Lab. The founder is Sika D. Sedzuro. Uncut Lab specializes in designing and engineering custom software applications for small businesses and governments. The company is also gearing up for a release of several software as a service tools in 2023. So she runs a cloud startup that caters to municipal and government clients. Okay. She has 6 employees full-time, and the funding is at $60,000. This is a point of contention that I have. Black founders are always they're always underfunded. We get 10%, if not less, than the funding necessary to, in comparison to our white counterparts, and that's why you don't see a lot of Black tech startups. But that goes with the saying of inequality. we're seeing inequality across the board in terms of access to resources. So, all right, next startup here is True Giving, Babatunde Ajao. True Giving is a fintech company that creates financial products to promote economic mobility and opportunity for communities and businesses. The startup's technology allows organizations to create customized intake forms, launch and receive online applications, manage and review grants, disperse funds to individuals, communities, and businesses. Okay. Right now, he only has 2 employees, and the funding is at $200,000. Again, Black people are not able to raise that $1 million capital like they should, but you know that comes with the industry right now. Inequality. Rubik's LS. Rubik's LS is a research organization and development firm that's designing an adaptive clinical. Oh shoot, why is it doing that? Adaptive clinical trials for underserved, underrepresented participants. The company's hope is that data will help create the next generation of precision therapeutics for those communities. Rubik's LS is in the process of opening a new 40,000 square foot facility in Lawrence that will allow it to run its own trials. He was able to raise $1.25 million for full-time 12 employees. Really dope. He's in the life sciences space. So it's good to see that. 1854 Cycling Co. 1854, Brando Randolph. 1854 Cycling Co. What's going on with this, man? 1854 Cycling Co. is a bicycle, e-bike, and apparel company founded to provide a meaningful work and a livable wage to the formerly incarcerated, particularly women. I don't know why it's doing this. By training and employing the formerly incarcerated to build, service, and soon program its electronic bicycles. In 1854, I don't know why it does that. 1854, Cycling hopes to help them break the cycles of both poverty and recidivism within the system. I mean, how can you argue against this? He raised $759,000 and has 8 full-time employees. I see nothing but good with this. I see nothing but good with this. You know, this is something that Complex will probably be very, very interested in. I won't go through all of these, but just to highlight some of these startups that's coming off. Must Watch, Che Eduardo. Must Watch has built a mobile app that connects people around television. The app helps people find new shows on every platform, see what their friends are watching, and recommend shows to other people. He was able to raise $90,000, has full-time 6 employees. And so I'm highlighting these things so that we see, I might as well go through all of them. I'm highlighting these things so that we see that tech is actually booming right now. Tech industry is booming right now in 2023 for Black people, all right? Pay or Pay. Pay or Pay offers a contactless payment service for restaurants to help them speed up the drive-through experiences. The tech works with restaurants' existing point of sales system and credit card processor. The platform integrates with the existing technology stack, including loyalty programs. The company raised $3 million seed round this year, led by Mass Mutual's money market Catalyst Fund. So his name is Derek Canton. I don't know this guy, but you know, it just proves the point. I mean, he raised $4.2 million. So I think that makes a lot of sense because he's in the fintech space, and fintech does raise the #1 amount of capital, you know, for startups, regardless of race. Callion. Darcy and Cristala Pratha. Callion's fermentation system produces substances with with high purity levels from biomass with applications in industrial water purification, material science, and pharmaceuticals. Kristalla Parther is an associate professor of chemical engineering at MIT, and Darcy previously worked at McKinsey & Co. in several startups. Math Talk, Omo Moses. Math Talk was founded to help underperforming schools by making math fun. By making math fun. Math Talk's team is made of parents, teachers, researchers, organizers, children's media producers, designers, artists, game developers, entrepreneurs, and kids that turn stories, public art, and augmented reality experiences into products and activities that make adults and children smile while learning math. He was able to raise $3.2 million. Dope stuff, man. Care Academy. Care Academy provides state-approved training for home care agencies, home health agencies, franchise systems, and payers. The startup says its training increases learning knowledge for better health outcomes. More than 30,000 learners have completed more than 1.5 million hours of training with Care Academy. Helen Adiosa. Yobi Inc. Ken Sun. Yobi Incorporated is a software company that aims to create the platform of choice for anyone building intelligent audio applications. Even in busy environments, Yobi's product can capture clean, high quality, and machine recognizable voice data, including sophisticated linguistic patterns and biological markers. That's pretty dope stuff. Our Work, Raheem Morris. Our Work wants to help companies hire and retain hourly workers. It recruits talent by re-engaging with past applicants and former employees, and aims to help franchises retain employees through its automated check-ins. This year, the company closed $12.5 million Series A round. That's amazing. That's amazing. Black Girls Nutrition. I'll cover this real quick. Katia Powell Laurent. Black Girls Nutrition is an online nutrition company designed specifically for women of color. The company helps women of color to lose weight, break the cycle of dieting, connect with other women on a similar journey. In Liberty Court, Jillian Isabel. After losing a close friend to cancer, Jillian Isabel decided to create a company that provided nutrition based products that address treatment side effects of cancer. The company's first product is Helios, which is for patients experiencing cancer-related mouth sores. Interesting. She raised $200,000. Rivet. Anj Fahimi. Rivet uses its platform to help creators. Rivet uses its platform to help creators connect with their fans. Its offering include analyzing fan data points and selling things like NFTs and merchandise directly to fans. Rivet's tech plugs into other social and commerce platforms and captures what keeps fans engaged. It uses these insights to guide creators and automate fan retention. It's pretty interesting. We covered Smart Charge already. InnoPsych, Chairman Charmaine F. Jackman. InnoPsych's digital platform helps users find a therapist of color in its directory. The company's goal is to use the directory and its educational content to combat negative mental health stigma. I think the Manosphere could use a little bit of this, in my honest opinion. But that's just a couple of these companies I just wanted to cover, man. I think that we're starting to see now that people are leaving the workforce, leaving Silicon Valley, and they're starting to, start their own thing. They're not waiting on anybody anymore. People are going out and, they're going to get the bag, so to speak, right? And so they're starting to build their own products. All right. Next item on the agenda. Let's share my screen real quick. All right, this is from TechCrunch. Black founders still raise just 1% of all VC funds in 2022. We just talked about this on the last item that we covered. The latest Crunchbase data shows that let me zoom in real quick. The latest Crunchbase data shows that Black startup founders in the United States raised around $264 million out of the total $33.6 billion in venture capital allocated in Q4 2022. That's an uptick from $178 million or 0.43% the group raised in Q3. In total, US Black founders raised an estimate $2.254 billion out of the $215 billion in US venture capital allocated last year. That's about 1%. A slight drop from the 1.3% raised in 2021. Let's break this down. So Black founders in the US picked up around 0.79% of VC funds raised in Q4 2022. There was a fear that during a bear market, investors would retreat to their old school networks, and the total amount of funding Black founders received last year is practically half the amount they raised in 2021, a record $4.34 billion out of around $330 billion in the US and $681 billion globally. Despite the record break in 2021, that amount of money equates to just 1.3% of all capital raised in the US alone. No matter what, it seems that actual percentage of the money raised for this cohort barely moves, even as more and more capital floods the market. Ty Calloway, the founder of FinTech Cooler, told TechCrunch that it's embarrassing as a Black founder to always be associated with negative statistics, especially as one trying to fundraise. Quote, "It seems like we all know the problem but don't want to solve it. When it's as simple as funding more Black founders," he said. "I know this system wasn't built for us, but when there are billion-dollar markets that cater to Black customers, they should overlook the ignorance and do a bit of research rather than showing their zero interest. It's a total uphill battle as a Black founder looking to raise venture capital, but we still do it anyways as the alternatives aren't that much greater for us." Andy Davis, the co-founder of the venture firm 10 by 10, told TechCrunch that Black founders were impacted by the economic climate as the companies a lot of them worked at were reducing resources and people. Quote, "Some Black people had to focus on stability in their lives before their startups," he continued. Still, he said that some exceptional Black founders were able to grow their companies and raise in the past year. Quote, the overall climate last year, a lot of funds either paused, stopped, or slowed down their deployment, impacting all startups, including Black founders the year before," Davis said. Quote, "I'm highly optimistic for Black founders this year, especially with the rise of diverse-led funds and investors. There does appear to be a slow change. For example, in 2016, Black founders raised $568 million in VC dollars out of around the total $70 billion allocated to the US founders. That was just 0.8%. In 2020, it took Black founders 390 deals to pick up $1.3 billion out of the $164 billion. And in 2022, it took around 225 deals to reach $2.2 billion, meaning Black founders appear to be raising more money within each individual round. Behavior Stewart, sorry, an investor at Black VC, or BLCK VC, echoed that many investors have told TechCrunch throughout the years that the decrease in funding to Black founders further highlights need for more diverse check writers. Quote, when the macroeconomic environment tumbled, the investors that were preaching D&I, diversity and inclusion, disappeared. And their implicit bias became more apparent, she said. As Stewart said, what happens next is anyone's guess. The ball is in the investor's court. There have been continuous coverage of what needs to occur. All that's left is for it to happen. So this is something I have been, banging the drum on for a while now, that Black people have a hard time raising capital. Lack of access to capital is why we can't get to or get these platforms and new products and new technologies off the ground. We don't have the same access to resources. And so when you have Black people raising only 1% of funds, you're not going to really get a whole lot out of that. And so on the Brain Trust, I've always, the last few years, I've been talking about there has to be alternative ways to raising capital. And we need access to these resources. Local banking institutions like Wells Fargo and Bank of America, they have not really been friendly to allocating, early stage investing for Black startups, not even just tech, but just Black startups in general. And so what you see here is the stymieing of progress. Black people having a difficult time breaking into the markets. And I think that we need a more Pan-African approach to this. That means that we're going to have to start working with Africans. We're going to have to start consolidating our resources, what we have. Most white and Asian, I can throw in there as well, but for the sake of conversation, let's keep it to white. They can go back to their parents and get angel seed investment. Mark Zuckerberg did it. I think Bill Gates did it, early in his Microsoft days. How these Silicon Valley companies came out of the garage is because they had access to capital. So they had the ideas, but they also had access to those resources. Black people, for one, don't have garages to work out of. So that's the first aspect that needs to be challenged. They're not working out of a garage. If they live in the projects or they live in some kind of social housing complex, they don't have a garage. So the workspace doesn't even exist. And number two, who's the angel investor? Who's really who in the family can you really rely on to actually raise that, that $25,000 to $100,000 to $200,000? Black people are not cash strapped like that. We know that 40% of Black people don't even have $2,000 in their savings account, for an emergency. So you're already working at a deficit. These sort of things are why Black people or Black people can't really break into the market in the capacity that they need to. It's not so much that they don't have the talent; it's that we don't have the human capital. We don't have the financial capital. It's financially intensive or capital intensive to actually get some of these startups off the ground. And we can see that with something like Tesla. Tesla was able to reach, I shouldn't say Tesla, but Elon Musk was able to raise $800 million, $1 billion from the US government. You think if Black people had access to the US government in that capacity to raise $1 billion or $2 billion to get their product off the ground, we'd be having this conversation? Not likely. In fact, Tesla raised more money. Elon Musk raised more money for Tesla than all Black startups combined, just by this article, right? And so these are the sort of issues that I see happening that, I don't see conversations really having outside of this article right here. I don't see a lot of people having this conversation overall. And so that's the sort of thing that really irks me, because we're all working against a machine right now. You know, whether you're claim ADOS or FBA, anything like that, everybody's working against the machine. Okay, Africans trying to get satellites into space, trying to power electricity, renewable energy. We're all working against the same machine. So it would behoove us if we all work together by consolidating our resources and our human capital to really launch something bigger and more immediate. And so that's my soapbox. I'm just on my soapbox right now, but I'm just saying that that's the sort of thing that I see. And so I think that, when you have like a place like the Manosphere that has, 500 people in the chat room talking about, Brittany Griner or something like that, or Stacey Abrams or something like that, and guys are popping super chats off. You got to understand, a lot of that money could be used to, finance or to float a startup. Okay. I've seen people put up $100, $500 super chats, over Brittany Renner or whatever her name is. And it doesn't lead to anything. I find that to be very interesting. All right, let me get to my last item on the agenda. I'll drop the link in the chat. See if anybody wants to come up. If we don't, we're going to take off. All right, this is from Harvard Business Review. What it's like to be a Black man in tech. Summary: the underrepresentation of Black people in tech has been an issue since the 1970s, when the Bay Area became Silicon Valley. We just talked about this. Though the lack of diversity has been criticized for decades, the problem hasn't gotten much better since then. Let me just scroll down, just go through this. As a Black man who has been working in the technology sector for more than 20 years, I can tell you that my race has almost always been a factor in how I am viewed and treated. In many of the companies that I have worked for, if not in all of them, I have been one of, and sometimes the sole African American in the department. When you're the only Black person in the office, you notice it. Glancing around, you notice that no one looks like you, talks like you, or has a story like you. Nobody has the gall to approach you and say, quote, hey, out of the 40 people on this floor, you're the only Black guy, but you sense that everyone else notices it too. You sense it from the stares you receive when you walk through the door, from the looks on the people's faces. When they find out you're competent at your job, from the alienation you feel after not being invited to lunch with your peers, and from the awkwardness they project when they try to engage you in everyday conversation. Being Black in tech, like being Black in America, is an exercise of mental toughness. Your mind is constantly wondering, how long can I last? The underrepresentation of African Americans in tech has been an issue since the 1970s. When the Bay Area became Silicon Valley, around this time, Frederick Terman, former Stanford University Dean of Engineering, began encouraging his students to start their own companies. We just talked about this, Black tech startups. Soon after, the Bay Area became home to Hewlett-Packard, Xerox, and then later Facebook, Apple, and Google. Though the lack of diversity at these companies has been questioned and criticized for decades, the problem hasn't gotten much better. In 2018, according to Silicon Valley Bank, only 1% of venture capital dollars went to Black startup founders, and Black employees made up around 2.8% of technical roles and 4.8% of their entire workforce. We just talked about Black tech startups only raising 1% in 2022. In 2018, it was the same thing. So again, we're still seeing the lack of upward mobility and trending, for access to these resources. More recently, Twitter reported that Black employees made up around 6% of their staff, and Facebook reported 3.8% of their employees were Black. All of this contributes to an environment that continues to be hostile towards African Americans, one that tells us you are not welcome. Over these same years, I have talked to many Black folks who also work in tech, former technical support representatives and system engineers to network architects and programmers. We have swapped stories that would make your mouth drop. Stories about having the validity of our work badges questioned by the companies that employ us. Stories of white team members who perceive us as the diversity hire and are surprised that our educations were not paid for by sports scholarships, and stories of peers who are shocked that we didn't come from broken homes or that we can speak correct English. The amount of times we have heard, quote, "You are so articulate," when answering a question or speaking up at a meeting is mind-blowing. All of these stories, along with the unending microaggressions, the mispronouncing of names, the questions about where we are really from, and that are at the fact that we can fulfill and succeed at our jobs we were hired to do. It wears on me mentally. To create real change, much work still needs to be done at the organizational and leadership levels. At the same time, Black people cannot afford to wait around for this change to take place. We deserve to take up space, move up, and thrive in big tech. And while we fight for more diverse, equitable, and inclusive workspaces, we should. If you are Black and you are interested in or currently entering the tech industry, know that it is not going to be easy. You are a minority in a sector that is incredibly slow in addressing race and diversity, but also know that you can find comfort and learn from people who look like you and who share your experience. I spent more than 2 decades of my life navigating this space, and I can be one of those people. I can offer you some advice. Below are 3 lessons I have learned during my time as an IT professional. These points are not meant to solve racism at work or convince tech companies to hire more African Americans. Rather, they are meant to provide you with skills that you can use to navigate this industry, set healthy boundaries, and protect your mental health and your career development as you grow. The most powerful thing you can do is be yourself. The first piece of advice I can offer any Black person coming into the predominantly white tech company is don't change yourself to fit in. Many times, as one of the few African Americans in a firm, I downplayed who I was and how I felt. I would code switch, ignore microaggressions, and bypass things that were not professional. Why? Because I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be excluded or make waves, and I feared that if I did, I might be fired. I know the story too well. But there were consequences to this. My coworkers felt comfortable making racist jokes around me. I hear police sirens. They must be coming to arrest LeBron. Quote, got a lot of laughs. These kind of comments about Black people were said often and just as often went unchallenged. I felt the constant stress of wearing 2 masks, one for work and the other for my life. I understood what W.E.B. Du Bois wrote when he talked about double consciousness, living as a Black man through the eyes of society and himself. It took 10 years for me to grow tired of, quote, shrinking myself at work. I started to speak up for myself and for others. I brought attention to discussions that could be considered inflammatory by confronting the people who initiated them. I escalated these issues to management, but unfortunately, there were consequences to this too. When I became more outspoken about race, how few Black people are employed in tech, and how we are treated, I became known as that Black guy. There were certain discussions and panels that I was not privy or invited to, opportunities not presented, and possibly even promotions that I did not receive. But I was more okay with those consequences than the ones that were born out of my silence. There is a saying, quote, I would rather be rejected for who I am than accepted for who I am not. When you are true to yourself and honest with who you are and where you are, that is a powerful thing. In my experience, when you stop trying to be the non-confrontational Black person and call out the inequalities you see, a weight will be lifted from your shoulders. You will now carry a new weight, the weight of being your authentic self in a space that may feel threatened by that. But this is the first step toward your personal growth, toward figuring out what you value, what you want to be at work, and maybe one day a larger systemic change. The second most powerful thing you can do is speak up. Being the only Black person on your team often means that the other people begin to view you as a designated Black expert. Whenever the questions come up, do Black people like this? Or why do Black people do that? You will be the one who is approached first. In my own experience, these questions often come off as annoying, albeit innocuous. But the mood changes whenever there is a police shooting of an unarmed Black man, or when another video of a white woman accusing a Black man of stealing or trespassing goes viral. Interactions, even casual ones, become more tense. It has been in moments like these that I have come to realize in my team members' eyes, I represent all Black people, regardless of age, sociological background, nationality, etc. Confrontation is never easy. But my advice here is to be upfront the first time something like this happens to you, because it probably will, by letting people know immediately when their comments or questions are offensive. They will know, they will grow more aware of how inappropriate their behavior is. The first time someone approaches you with a question that you aren't comfortable answering, let them know that you are not the authority of all things Black. Explain that we are not a monolithic group, but people who have all lived different experiences. If someone jokes and asks, quote, hey, do all Black people ... I would respond in a firm but assertive way, I don't know all Black people, so I wouldn't know how to answer that. Your questions is offensive. If you are not comfortable confronting the person in the moment, schedule time to talk to them privately and let them know why their comment was hurtful. Either way, speak up and let your teammates know how you feel. Set the precedent that the questions are unacceptable. Finally, know when to ask for help. Whenever I give a talk at a corporation, I stress, quote, if someone files a complaint about racism, it is everyone's responsibility to address it. Once this happens, everyone needs to stop, direct their attention towards the incident, and listen. One of the biggest failings I've seen in tech management is their lack of ownership. If you tell your manager that you have experienced discrimination, that you feel the work environment is hostile, or that you have seen an act of racism, know that your concerns are always valid and they deserve to be taken seriously. Sadly, in my experience, these complaints are almost never taken seriously, and there is very little, if any, discipline issued to the offending party. The first instinct of most of the supervisors and managers I have dealt with is to put the blame on the person being discriminated against. Tell them they need to learn how to take a joke, or explain away the racist incident as an example of cultural insensitivity. When this happens, you, the employee, the Black employee, will not feel heard. You may feel gaslighted or think, maybe the problem is me. Maybe I don't fit in here. Maybe I need to change. Let me answer those questions for you. No, you are not the problem. You may not always fit in, but that doesn't mean that you need to change. This is not an employee issue or a departmental issue. It is an organizational issue, and your organization needs to be held accountable. If management is not addressing your report of discrimination and racism, escalate it. Schedule time with your manager's manager and explain why you are raising the issue to them. If that person does not address it properly, go to their manager. Do not be afraid to continue to escalate the issue. The highest level of this of this would be reporting it to human resources, HR. To present the strongest case possible, you need to provide documentation. That means you need to write every incident you or your colleagues experienced down, excluding the time and date of the occurrence, what was said or done, and who was involved. If you have allies, who can you back your statements and support? Who can back your statements and support you? Even better, it's easier to ignore one person than it is to ignore a group of people. Sometimes you may have to make a decision and decide if you truly can be who you are at your company. If you have to compromise yourself and your morals to stay, then it is not the right place for you, and it is okay to choose to leave. In times of fear or doubt, do as I do. And think about this quote from Zora Neale Hurston. Quote, "If you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it." In 2021, we are headed into a year that is even more racially polarizing, with events of January 6th, the storming of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. by Trump supporters, far-right groups, and white supremacist organizations. Race is at the forefront for many of us. Businesses and corporations are once again forced to address racism and how to make their environments comfortable and inviting for everyone. As a Black employee in tech, tell your truth. Talk about the experience. Do not water down what you have faced, being one of the few in the field. When I started to be more outspoken and follow the advice that I'm giving you, I realized that I am not an individual but part of a collective. My efforts to make tech more equitable are not just about me, but the networking engineer, the programmer, the project manager, and all of you, and all of the other professionals that will come after this, and that includes you. I think this is pretty much bang on the money. I mean, we've been talking about this on this channel for a long time and that's one of the main reasons why I started doing the tech talks on Saturdays on the Brain Trust, was to actually help navigate a lot of guys in the manosphere who had these sort of deep questions. They didn't really understand how to get into the industry. If they were in the industry, how did they get out of a position? How do they advance? What's the trajectory? What should they be looking at? And how to deal with racism. And we've had several discussions on Saturdays about how to deal with these confrontations and discrimination and racism and, lack of upward mobility in some of these organizations. Me personally, I think that if you run into these sort of issues, I think you should leave. I don't personally think going to HR actually helps. I think HR works against the best interests of Black men almost exclusively. But that's just my opinion on that. I don't disagree with this at all. I think he's right on the money on this. So I'll drop the link down and see if anybody wants to come up. Yeah, don't be afraid to come up here and chop it up, man. We could chop it up about anything we talked about tonight. We'll spend an hour or so up here. Oh, sorry. I don't know. I'm not seeing anybody come up. If not, we can just close it out and wrap it up for tonight.
Can you hear me?
What's going on?
What's good? I don't know what happened, man. I look, I was logged up on StreamYard. That's weird. No, it's earlier when I was clicking. I'm good. Wait, let me make sure. Let me mute my YouTube. Sorry. All right.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
good?
Mute up, please.
All right. Okay, it should work now. Mike, are you saying
Yes, sir.
I was listening back and forth. How I'm doing things right now. Are the people from the content are looking to have their own satellite? In the
So
process? Mhm.
there are 24 African countries that have put up satellites already.
Okay.
And so they have their own satellites.
This is new. Okay. All right. So if they have their own satellite, they should have no issue with like certain technology like cell phone and service and all that stuff. They got their own satellite, correct?
So the satellites are used for different purposes. Some of them are used for weather observation, crop observation, tracking of, different sort of, activities of humans may be doing on the ground, people crossing borders and stuff like that. So there's a variety of things that satellites are used for, including like TV. TV is a really big thing on the continent. And so it depends on, different satellites do different things. And so they have a variety of reasons why they use them.
Is there an article that go in detail this? I want to look more into this because this is something that was somewhat new to me. I heard some parts of content from the Wanda doing some things, but I didn't know that they were really like up on here. That we're not really investigate since we're here in the West. Personally,
they actually work with NASA, and so it's not uncommon that African countries, it doesn't cost a lot to make a satellite for them because they have the resources, because they work as a nation state. They're not working as individuals. What's going on, Keep It Techie?
That's good.
What's going on, Mike? How y'all doing?
That's good. Keep Techie.
I'm chilling, bro.
All right. No, I ain't want to interrupt y'all. If y'all keep going.
No, we it's good. It's good. No,
okay.
We good.
What's up, though, man? Hey, so I just wanted to kind of chime in, on that article. That last article. I caught
yes, sir.
Most of that article I came in, and that's some good advice, for people that are working in the field. And I'm glad you're sharing it. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully the people out there listening to it, or at least check out that article as well, because it was great information. And some of that stuff, I've dealt with in various jobs that I worked in, not as much as like some of the examples, but is there. You can feel it, you can see it, you know what I'm saying? And I've always been one of those people, that kind of just brush it off or whatever. And that and I try to stay away from confrontation. But hey, that's something that I kind of, I don't know, I made the decision to, push back in certain situations or either leave the company. That was the best example, at the end that you stated about just going on and move and leave the company, take your talents to somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, because the thing here is HR is not going to have your back in the way that you like they supposed to, right? And because you're a black man. Now, if you're a woman, that might be something different. For whatever reason, women get the benefit of the doubt. But when you're a black man and you express that you're going through these sort of, these sort of confrontations and challenges, it's dismissed. And he's right about that. And I mean, you and I have been in the tech industry for just about the same amount of time, and I can tell you, and people listen to this, man, that's an everyday occurrence, even in remote. Because in a remote, when you work remote, the interactions are going to be a little bit more insidious, where you have not being CC'd on the email, not getting a Zoom link or a Teams link to a meeting, or getting it at the last minute. not having access to certain corporate business proprietary data that you need to do your job. There's a lot of things that go on remotely that that does not happen in the office, but it's still a way of it still has negative impact on how you do your job and how you engage the organization.
One question: since the HR, still doing this discrimination, how effective do you think the discrimination will be once that they completely automated with AI? How that game will play in regards to racial lines?
So with HR, with human resources, you're always going to have a human involved. I think that's kind of like that might be the law in a lot of states that somebody has to be managing the employees in terms of their interactions in the environment. There always has to be some kind of some kind of human there. So AI is only going to help them filter out. It's only it only complements their day job. Basically, when they have to sift through resumes, when they have to go through different sort of employee data in terms of benefits and stuff like that, who gets benefits and what kind of benefits, family versus single, and different sort of work trainings and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And these sort of and in Massachusetts, we have the law is that everybody must do security training. You have to do security training so that everybody's aware of how to manage data, and so that you don't have data loss and you don't end up with ransomware attacks and things of that nature. That's the law. But that's where HR comes in. HR engages employees at that level. And so I don't see AI replacing HR in that capacity. I see it as a complementary technology to the organization.
Not yet. But
by law, somebody has to be there. By law, somebody has to be there.
Okay.
You can't just leave it up to technology, right? If I'm an employee and I go upstairs, go talk to HR, I can't talk to a robot. I have to talk to a human being because the AI has not matured itself enough to deal with the different sort of levels of interactions that human beings have with each other. It doesn't know how to facilitate that because it's just not designed for that purpose. It's designed to be a complementary technology to what you're already doing.
And the only reason why I'm pressing the question, Mike V, I've done a stream about the useless. What do you call this article again? I did. What name of it? It's some deal with the useless people. People are useless. I'm trying to remember it. Give me 1 second. Let me find it. And give me a second. Let me find
and just
it.
to add to Mike's statement, while you looking that up, yeah, it's to complement what people are actually doing at the moment. Like for instance,
now I know it is the rise of
like
the useless class. Yeah, that was written
okay. Go ahead.
5 or 6 years ago. But go ahead, keep taking this one.
I was just
in there. If you want to look at Mike B.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
No, I was just
kind of complimenting.
chat.
I can't put in the chat because I'm not a mod, so I'm putting the private chat.
Okay.
Like for instance,
go ahead,
that's the example I was gonna give right fast. But like for instance, you go talk to the human being and they put in whatever they need to put in, and automatic emails go out, or training, dates get shot to your calendar. That type of automation, what I'm saying, will be incorporated, and you still have to have that human element there. So yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rael. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Give me a second.
Yeah, no, Josh, that's actually right on point. HR is not meant to be replaced with other forms of technology. It's just not. It's not designed for that. That's not the role of HR. And so, you can replace, the way you order, things for Burger King and McDonald's, but you're not going to replace HR because they serve a function. They serve a function to the organization. They have to interface with the CEO, the C-suite as a whole, and then they have to interface with other people below the C-suite. And so that's why you can't replace HR with AI. It just doesn't work in that function.
Okay, I put it in the private chat. You can look at it for yourself on Mikey and get a good.
Okay, I got that.
All right, good. All right. Yeah, but I said, how technology is accelerating and moving, is very uncertain. But like I said, while people still have the human interaction with a lot of things, that a lot of Black men are going to be faced with the same obstacles. Either you adapt or you get around it one way or the other, because we all know why they do this, because it takes us out of the competition, the ones that's in the game personally, that could probably do much better than most of them anyway. So it makes sense why they'll do the discrimination in all the games, what you rightfully do, especially you put in the work, the real work personally. I'm saying.
When I actually thought about something else, this is something that I recently just recorded a video on, but it's similar to like Chat GPT.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. Or
I covered a little bit. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's meant to complement developers and not be a replacement. You still have to have some human interaction with it. That's, considered an AI. It's an AI running in the background, but you have to interact with it. It's not, and that's one of my criticisms with it, being that I don't want people to look at it and get, I call it intellectually lazy, leaning on that to fully develop whatever you're trying to develop. You still have to keep your skills up. You still have to, understand what you're doing in order for Chat GPT to benefit you. And sorry, Mike, I hope I didn't go off topic. That just popped up in my head.
Go right ahead. Oh, go right ahead.
If you did a video on it, personally, keep taking. I'll watch your video on it, because I only did with it briefly, because I talked about this yesterday on a lot of things about do men get capped, and I did include Chat GPT just to show people the example from the same article, The Rise of the Useless Class. So, and this is like a period of next 10 years, next decade. But who knows? But like I said, there's still need for human interaction for a lot of things, and I don't really can't say believe, but I don't think it's wise to lead everything to artificial intelligence and all stuff, and a lot of things, in my opinion. I mean, still there gotta be some human interaction, regardless. They're trying to save money, in my opinion. But like I said, when you live in a capitalist world, anything is possible. I mean, they still want the same outcomes for less of the effort. And in the real world, that's not logic, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's some functions that can be replaced with. Yeah, there's some functions that can be replaced with technology, but the thing here is, the technology has not been matured. It won't be matured in our lifetime, to be quite honest with you. Not for the next 25 to 30 years. Like look at self-driving cars. Although the technology is bleeding edge, it's still not sufficient enough to allow these cars to be on the road with other human beings.
Okay.
It's just not, and it won't be for quite some time. Primarily because we don't have the infrastructure to back it up. And so I think when we talk about AI, we don't, and cause somebody like myself and Josh, keep it techie, we don't look at AI as a job replacement. We look at it as something that complements what we do from our day to day. I don't want to have to go through all the logs, on a SQL server or a Oracle database or something like that to find out if there's any log for J or anomalies in there. The AI does that for me. So that cuts half of my time out. What would have took me 90 minutes or even 2 or 3 hours, that does it in a couple of minutes for me.
Yeah, minutes, like less than 10 minutes.
It does it in a couple of minutes for me. And so I'm not looking to replace my job, and it's not going to replace my job, primarily because it serves a different function. When you, like, for example, when you put a supercharger or a turbocharger on an engine, you're not going to replace the whole engine. You're just bolting on another piece of technology to accelerate it further. And I think that I look at AI from that perspective, that it's a bolt-on technology that can actually advance what our immediate agenda, right? Our immediate needs. And so I haven't seen AI replace any jobs as it stands today. Maybe you could say, okay, the ATM, as a technology, as a machine, replace the bank teller, but we still have bank tellers. Right? Because you still need to interact with a human being at some point.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree.
No,
And Mike, I'm gonna have to,
unless
drop down. I'll catch
Yes,
you on
sir.
the next one. I got to prepare for something for tomorrow for work. But great stream.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna go back and watch the replay because I missed the beginning. So
okay,
definitely
that'd be
appreciate you doing this.
that'd be
And
good.
look forward to the next
Yes,
one.
Yeah, but yeah,
Yes, sir.
keep it.
Thanks for coming up, bro.
All right.
Yeah, you should do a video on that, the Chat GPT from your perspective. I want to hear from your perspective, bro.
Okay, I got you.
I appreciate it. All right.
All right, peace.
Till next time. I'm not sure Ryle's ready. If he's ready. No, he's probably still doing. But overall,
No,
go
ahead.
No, I said overall, in regards to space and stuff, I mean, it would be nice to see a lot more of us in those fields still, in the space journey, you know, because that's where the future.
We have the human capital. It's just a matter of access to the resources. Like the article is saying, it's not that we don't have people. We have people. It's just not. It's just we don't have access to the resources. And so once we get access to the resource, you'll start to see more productivity come out of it. As it stands right now, we just don't have access. We're not like SpaceX, right? That's the problem that Black people have, is that SpaceX got a lot of funding from the federal government. Black people are not getting all that federal funding for their own ambitions, right? So somebody like Elon Musk, who's not even an American, he came here from South Africa. He's able to acquire resources in the capacity that Black people can't even imagine. And so that's the sort of challenges that we're up against. But Ryle, what's going on,
man? Peace, Mike, Chaos, and rest of the chat. I was well, the one advantage that I would say that Black men have at this particular moment is that the nature of U.S. Business is changing for the better. And I know a lot of people might think that's not true, but I've been reading up on a lot of this. And the reason why I say that is because people need to understand that talent really is king and queen at this point. A lot of these companies have realized since the pandemic that workers have a lot more leverage and power than they used to have, and they're using it. And so you're not going to necessarily get an employee to stay with you by offering them more money necessarily. What a lot of these newer employees who are coming on the scene in the younger generations, for example, like millennials and Zs, their work lifestyle matters more. So they'll take a less paying job if they get the kind of lifestyle they want. And so companies can't afford to lose talent because now companies are becoming much more global in their outlook. They're not just competing with companies in their city, state, even on a national scale. They're having to compete for talent globally. And so companies are having to capitulate more to the wants and the needs of especially key types of personnel. And so this is where Black men can really get their footing, because if you, just like what Booker T. Washington was talking about, like, look, hey, these people might be racist, but if you get the skill necessary that they need, then you can make the money and build up your community on, having skill sets that are indispensable in terms of these people's companies. And so this is why the brain trust is so important, because the brain trust has consistently talked about, the things that the innovations that's out here waiting for Black men to be a part of, so they can be in the know. Like most of Black people are not going to research. I mean, unfortunately, they're not going to do that. That's fine. But if you can find spaces like this where people have done the research for you and can synthesize it for you and present it, you can really, expand pretty quickly. I mean, I've seen people who have come back to the space and say, hey, watching some of y'all streams, I learned about the certification. Man, I got that certification now. So it really, spaces like this are really impactful, which is why it makes no sense for, a Black manosphere space to basically, in a nutshell, kind of talk around this space, because this is a think tank. And going back to Booker T. Washington's philosophy, Booker T. Washington's economic philosophy was a form of Black nationalism. His economic strategy was Black nationalism. That's why that's why Marcus Garvey was willing to utilize it. Booker T. Washington wanted to basically recreate Tuskegee in Jamaica because he was inspired by what he saw Booker T. Washington do. Booker T. Washington, there's a school in Liberia that's named after him. Booker T. Washington had business endeavors in Togo that were centered around growing cotton, working in conjunction with the German government. So he had even coming from a plantation experience, Booker T. Washington had a global mindset in terms of how to address the issues that were facing Black men and Black people as a whole. And so we need to get back to those principles, those business principles that he was espousing, that even white people saw it smart to utilize as well. Teddy Roosevelt actually used his blueprint from the National Negro Business League, which the first meeting, ironically, Mike, was in Boston. Their first meeting convening, which was, I think, about 400 delegates, actually convened in Boston back in 1900. So we have an actual blueprint already that has already proven to be successful. It's just, unfortunately, throughout the years, Black men have just really dropped this model, and we need to really pick up that mantle back again and get back to work.
Indeed, greatly said. I think we're very how should I say this? We're decentralized at this point, in a global economy, and I think we're all fighting the same juggernaut, but we're not organized enough to take it on together. And that's kind of why I wanted to go over these articles, because everybody's seeing the same thing. Africans are seeing the same thing that we're seeing over here, and we're seeing the same thing that Africans are over there are dealing with. Even if you've never stepped foot over there, they're having the same mental issues. Ghana has a car company called Kantanka that, when I was over there, I was looking for it. I was like, well, how come no one's driving this? He said, people don't believe in it. For them, Kantanka is like a Cadillac or a Buick, for the country. We have the same problems here. And I'm saying we don't really believe in our own ambitions or unnecessary interests. We could get a lot more done, man, if we really sat down and really chopped it up on what are our immediate needs. And so, when we got Black people only getting 1% of venture capitalist funding, being discriminated at banks for loans, not having access to seed funding and stuff like that, these sort of things hurt our ability to engage these new global economies, as well as take advantage of emerging technology. You can't really work around. You can't really innovate when you're burdened with so many of these sort of societal issues and human resource issues. It's just a matter of us really getting down to the meat and potatoes, getting down to the raw nuts and bolts of this. How do we create our own ecosystems? Because what works for the gray boys over there is not working for us. We don't have access to the same markets, the same capital that Elon Musk has. Elon Musk can raise money from the federal government, for Tesla and SpaceX and some of these other ventures. We don't have it like that. We're not walking into Washington and getting $800 million, $2 billion, for our startups, because like the article said, we're still dealing with the same sort of biases that these folks have. I just call it racism. I don't call it for anything else. I don't need any special words for that. We're still dealing with racism at that level. And so if Black people had access to $100 billion up front to do what they needed to do in order to gauge this market, man, they know what would be the outcome of that. They know that they wouldn't be able to compete. You would see a lot more Silicon Valleys, or I shouldn't say Silicon Valleys, but more technologically driven Black neighborhoods. These sort of things would Chaos. You got a lot of feedback.
Oh, is it echoing? What's wrong?
Yes.
No, it's a lot of. Yeah, and so you would
Let me
see
jump down and jump back in.
more.
No, you better now. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, you would see a lot more turnaround in the communities in 5 or 10 years, because that's usually like the time frame, the development life cycle for technological innovation. Like in Rwanda, they had a 20-year plan from 2000. They started in 2000 and they worked in 5-year increments. Okay, they raised money through what do they call it? Not is it philanthropy? They got money from the United Nations to help rebuild their country, and they started paving roads. They started investing in infrastructure and things like that. And so that 20-year plan had 5-year increment, 5-year sprints for tech development. Okay, they were going to be a tech power. They knew that Kagame knew that he was going to move the country in that direction, because they didn't have. They're not a resource intense country. Their biggest resource is their human resource. They had to invest in their people. They had to educate their people. They had to increase the literacy rates overnight. They had to work at scale. And so I think what's happening here is that we're running into these challenges, but we're not actually getting to the nuts and bolts. Okay, what do we need to do at this point? And because what Booker T did was impeccable for his time.
Yes.
But what's happening now is a different different sort of economy. And so some of the things he did back then work for back then, but when you start looking at it now, because Tuskegee is not what it is today, what it was back then. It just isn't. It's not the same institution. But I agree with your assessment on Booker T, and I'm pretty well studied on Booker T too. But the thing here is, most people are not going to look to Booker T because that history hasn't been taught. And a lot of the things that Booker T has done may not necessarily reverberate today, because the way the economies have shifted, money has shifted, powers have shifted, technologies have shifted. And I think we have to look at how we build our ecosystem to be a lot more functional for us as it stands right now, because what we're in right now is a lot more proprietary than what most people can imagine. Just being shut out because of what you look like the brother said in the article, man, all the sort of racism that you have to encounter, that stuff is serious. It weighs down on your ability to innovate.
Well, I was talking to Alonzo, and one of the things that I said to him is that Black people, man, are going to have to learn how to respect their Black business class. Like this, I mean, we've seen the feedback we have gotten, even in this space of Black men regarding business, and how much pushback we've gotten. And when you have when you have your professional class of people, because remember, if you go back to even Garvey did not pull lazy people amongst Black people to join the Universal Negro Improvement Association. That's not who he picked. He picked the professional class of Black people. Okay. And so when you have people who are arguing against your professional class, like do white people have their cohorts of whites who, you know, rail against business? Yes. But overall, white people ain't out here with a negative view of business like that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just impossible. And when you look at other groups of people, it's the same thing. Typically, your business class is going to drive it should be driving the progress of your group, because they're the ones that's coming up with ideas of products that you can bring to scale and market, create jobs and things like that. Government is not in the business of creating jobs. And so when you don't have a respect for the innovators of your group, that's a serious problem, because what you're doing is, like, for example, I said this about Black Sands Entertainment. I don't know if you saw when they were on Shark Tank. Like the thing that
I met yeah.
You met them before? Okay. What made that made them being on Shark Tank so important was seeing Kevin Hart on there. And the reason why I say that is because Kevin Hart had the business infrastructure to cater to the idea of that black man, his wife, and I think it's a white dude that quit working for Disney to work with this brother and his wife. That's how much he believed in this dude's dream. And so when you have the opportunity, when you have a black man in a position to give VC to another black man, that's a very powerful position to be in. I mean, that's very powerful. And because specifically for what you were just talking about, we cannot have people trying to knock the black business class and then turn around and complain when people and say, well, I'm not saying you say this, Mike, but you have a lot of people who will be out here complaining that white people ain't doing nothing for black people. But the people that can be the type of people who can offer VC to black businesses, and this is the very thing that Booker T was talking about. We need to dominate our own market first. So we should be the ones that's getting that VC capital, because that's more investments that we can make, be much more successful money-wise, to expand, to be able to fund even more endeavors. And so the beautiful thing about Kevin Hart, he had the infrastructure in place. I didn't even know he had that stuff in place until he was on Shark Tank, because most of us are just seeing him being on the entertainment stuff. But entertainment is a business. But he got to the business side of the entertainment business instead of just being the one who is drawing people. He is in a position to empower. And when he decided to roll with Black Sands, even Mark Cuban came and was like, "Hey, can I get a piece of that too?" So because now they were thinking like, okay, how the merchandising and all this type of stuff. So they were thinking really on a grand scale. And so we need black men to really step into this business arena and really compete, because like I said the other day on the MOT's channel, when you get into business and you actually see, and I'm just talking about certain white people, I'm not talking about all white people. What you see is that there's a lot of incompetent white people in business making money. And the reason why that they're making a lot of money is not because they're competent, it's because we're not showing up to the dance. We're not getting into the game. And that just leaves a vacuum for them to just feel and just get on. And a lot of times they can just get on and because they white and people just gonna roll with them and just buy their stuff. We have to enter the market to make the market more efficient, to force people to create better products, so prices can come down and people can, keep more of their money instead of having one set of people in the market dominating and being able to drive prices on things. So this has a very large impact over black people's life overall, and black people, just especially black men, need to get in the game and really do some of the things that Booker T. Washington was talking about, even though it's a different time, the philosophy still resonates at this point.
Absolutely. What's going on underrated, man?
Hey, peace, everybody. Can y'all hear me?
Put some volume on your mic, please.
Hello?
Yeah, you're
Oh,
good.
you can hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
How's everybody doing?
Chilling, bro. Chilling.
I feel that. Great live stream, by the way. Man, very informative. I guess one of the things that well, going to Rael's well, pretty much from the article and just everything that we talked about in terms of like Black people not being organized. I always thought maybe one of the ways we're just not organized is because we haven't really defined a we. Like who's in for the Black agenda? What is the Black agenda? You know? And then when that's established, who are the honest players that want to support that agenda? Because we in the BAIO, we talk about it a lot when it comes to being organized and just having things established. And also power. I think that's another reason why, you know, there's nothing coming into play when it comes to ownership. Maybe you have certain Black people that just don't want power, and they don't want power because they don't understand what power is, or they think it's a bad thing. But when you read like the book from Amos Wilson, Blueprint for Black Power, you look at different kinds of power and how it can enhance your life and not just cause harm, right? And it just, I don't know, it's just infuriating because when you see like a city of Dubai that was a desert, but then now they made it into a city within like a short amount of years, you see a lot of you see the importance of how technology should come into play, you know, with Black people. Like we've talked about Rwanda, right, and Uganda and Liberia. And we've always tried to push Liberia because that country has been founded by free African American slaves. I've always wondered, like, you know, how come that's not being talked about, you know? And
I actually heard. No, I understand what you're saying. I actually heard a Liberian minister talk about this last summer when I was on the continent. Why does Rwanda? How was Rwanda able to have a civil war and then come out of it, you know, as one of the premier African countries on the continent? In fact, it's one of the top 7, as the lowest crime rate, the cleanest city on the continent, Kigali, and one of the most hospitable for African Americans to even be there and to do business. You know, it takes 6 hours to open up a business in Rwanda. In the United States, it can take you 6 weeks to 6 months, and so. I don't know. I think when you talk about power and these power dynamics, we don't have a governance framework.
Right.
We lack governance.
Exactly.
We don't know what position people are supposed to play and things like that. It's just, you can hear, because that's exactly what a hustle is. A hustle is a business without governance.
Right.
You're selling CDs, you're selling mixtapes, you're doing all these sort of things, but it doesn't have any real business. It doesn't have a business canvas. It doesn't have a mission statement or an agenda. That's what a hustle is. And I think that Black people live off of the hustle, and we're in an economy in the fourth industrialization. That's not acceptable. You can't hustle your way through this. You can't hustle your way through this if you don't have a set of standards and the human capital to back it up. Yeah, if you don't have the human capital to back it up, it's not going to take off. You're going to get left behind, and you don't want to end up like, and I hate to say it, like the Cubans, man. Cubanos, man, they had Fidel had a lot of great ideas, but the poor governance is what is really hurting the country, because they can't really expand their talent. Whereas if you go to somewhere like Barbados has a 99% literacy rate, and it's very hospitable for doing business down there, and the crime rate is very low. And so these are the sort of challenges that Black people run into, man, in America. And it's hard to do business on the continent when you come with that mindset of this, this sort of let me flip this and let me flip this brick, and that doesn't work, because with technology you can't flip anything. You can't flip a satellite. You can't flip an autonomous vehicle. You can't flip blockchain. It doesn't work that way. And so we have to have people who have come through the ranks of the academy and into the environment that could actually bring their talents and actually have some kind of governance framework. And I think that's what Rwanda has done. Paul Kagame has had a 20-year track record. I talked about that earlier. A 20-year plan that they were going to have 5-year sprints as to how they were going to get. They spent the first 5 years organizing, and then the next 5 years they started working on implementation. And then the next 5 years was execution, and then the next 5 years was the postmortem. Okay, so now they're in that point, that they're in that end phase of that 20-year plan, and so they've reached a lot of their goals. They have their own space agency now. They have their own ecosystem for tech. They've improved the literacy rates. They've improved the agricultural rates and stuff like that. They've done all the necessary things to make themselves a formidable power. They increased their military footprint. And so I think in America, we just have a different. Go ahead, brother, please.
Well, no, I was going to add on to it, because they have a government that caters to them, and the way that they can define it. And that's what, we talk about in the BEIO, is that we don't have a government. And I guess the best way I could think about it is like a house. When you're under someone else's house, right? We've all been kids before. We have parents. We have to follow certain rules. We have to do chores. We have to take out the trash. We may not like it, but they own it, and we just have to go by it until we decide at a certain point where we want to have our own house and design it the way we want it to be. And some people are just very comfortable in being here, not saying that it's wrong, because you can have satellite communities, but where's the external support going to come from? Meaning, like, Chinese have a China, Indians have an India. All that money's being circulated to a country that they have a home, and what about us? Like, where are we going to have those satellite communities, and what are we going to support the bigger picture of?
Well,
that's the challenge.
Let me say this. In my interactions with other groups of people, like small hats and Mormons and stuff like that,
right?
They move like they move like chambers of commerce. Everything they do is centered around economic activity. That's what they're not going to have a conversation, about Big Booty Brenda and Keisha. they're not talking about that. Right. Everything that the men are focused on is centered around economic activity, period. They will not even have any respect for you as a man if you're not talking business. Right. They won't even talk to you. They won't even take you seriously. And so, have any of y'all ever been like went to a HBCU? Many of y'all ever went to one?
Yeah, I've went to because I'm in Atlanta, so I've been to Morehouse.
I'm saying, have you ever like attended one?
Oh, no.
Okay, well, I did. I went to Clark. I went to Clark, Atlanta for a semester.
Get out of here! All right.
Yeah. So the one thing that I appreciated about going to a HBCU is that it puts you in contact with a lot of elite Black people who come from elite Black families.
Yeah.
And so the downside of that, unfortunately, is that many times when these Black people attend HBCUs, they do it for legacy reasons sometimes, a lot of times, but also many of these people, because I talked to a lot of them when I was there, and what they said was they wanted to go to a HBCU to get the Black experience. And it's funny that they look at it like that, because coming from a well-to-do family, your father's, I met.
Oh, I think you cut out.
The notion from them was, in their mind, they weren't authentically Black because they came from a successful background. Okay.
Right.
And that's what I said earlier about the lack of respect for the business, the Black business class. And if you read Lawrence Otis Graham's book, Our Kind of People, who came from an elite background, he really delves into this mindset and how well-to-do Black people will play down their accomplishment. Black, which failure shouldn't be viewed as being authentically Black. We see this even with shows like The Good Times, where people are celebrating struggle.
Right.
That's what the show is about. Like, struggle is nothing to celebrate. And so this plays into the psychology, man, of a lot of our people. Like, even when we're successful, it's like success is looked at as a white thing. So when you attain it, people call you white, or you're trying to be white for being successful. And so this is a really big problem. And so as men, we have to fortify those environments, those economic spheres, to where we define success as being business oriented, civic engagement. I know myself, man, I've done volunteering before. It's a great experience. I used to volunteer with people with disabilities. Gave me a very different perspective on life. Because when you think you have it so bad, and then you see people who spinal cord injuries and paralyzed from the waist down, or brain injuries, bad accidents. I saw people who, went to war when the Iraq War first came out, and, got injured in battle. Families, put a real toll on their family. Some people lost their family. So seeing people go through human stuff under those conditions, it made me look at, my stuff and be like, I really can't complain, And so, these are the types of things that, we have to really take more seriously. Like, we can't be a people that's constantly asking and not giving. Like, something like when Martin Luther King birthday comes around, people should be out here trying to do something, volunteer, soup kitchen, something. You'd be surprised, man, the people's lives you touch just by not looking down on them and just treating them like a human being, like how much that really resonates with them. And so we really have to make success Black. We cannot allow people who are not successful to try to define
I agree.
as whiteness when you choose to do things that bring you success, because that's a very big problem.
Exactly. I mean, that should be the whole objective, is controlling the narrative, because you have other ethnic groups that are pretty much telling it for us, and obviously it's just not the right way. And I definitely agree with you, having that business mindset, that should definitely be supported, because if not, I would just say, just bend the knee. If you're comfortable with asking and wanting to borrow and stuff, just bend the knee, put on your poom shorts, get your pom-poms, and get on all fours. Like,
well, I think Nationhood Influencer in the chat, asked a really good question. we break down the ills and the woes brilliantly, and then what? And that's the challenge, right? Because I mean, underrated mind. I don't know if you've been to Africa, but when I was in Africa, you had Chinese, you had South Koreans, you had Japanese. They come with bags of money. Okay, they come with
Right.
their country backing them, like you said earlier. They're here to play for keeps.
Yeah.
Russians come with money, and the Russians are very benevolent with a lot of their resources. They gave Africa satellites for free, to get away from the Europeans, to undermine the Europeans, because Africans were paying big money to Europeans for access to satellites, millions, hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Wow.
So Gaddafi came in and helped undermine all that stuff. But what the point that I'm making here is that we're gonna have to figure out a different sort of way of interacting in from a geopolitical perspective. That part has to be understood. I don't know how long you've been around the Brain Trust, but I've been talking about this since the inception, that
Oh yeah,
if
I've
100 black
been
men,
subscribed. Yeah.
if 100 black men showed up off of a Qatar Airways or Emirates airplane with suitcase with business briefcases, okay, not ones that have AC doocy backgammon, that sort of briefcase. I'm talking about a real briefcase, blueprints, laptops, and money, and said, we're here to do business. They're going to listen. They're going to, if you're one guy, they're not going to listen. They don't have to listen to you because you're just one guy. But if you come with the numbers, if black men showed up suit and ties and said, I need to talk to the minister of ICT or finance or innovation, whoever it was. Yeah, they're going to listen. They're going to listen because they have to. Okay, I've met many people on the continent, African Americans, who are over there permanently doing business, and so when we have these conversations, I think we have to. I shouldn't say we, but I shouldn't say. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but I'm saying,
No, of course.
collectively, we cannot look at being global and trying to do business without the backing of the United States. If this is going to be home turf, then we're going to have to control how we engage our government and how we get them to back us going into this. Because if you get swindled over there, it is what it is. The United States isn't coming to save you because you haven't operated under their auspices of doing business. That's why they had the U.S. Africa Summit, and that's why they have the CCA, what's the name of the CCA? The Continental Africa Continental Corporation, whatever it is. That's what that's for. That the whole purpose of that is so that you can do business on behalf of the United States. But how do you engage from that perspective when you have a lot of brothers in here? And I could say sisters too, but I'm really harping on the brothers. These guys don't even understand the politics on the ground here, and they don't understand the politics on the ground over there. And so these are some of the challenges, because remember, you've been to Africa. There's 600 languages over there. English isn't the only language.
Nah.
You're right. And I think that's why with our social network, we started off with pursuing Liberia because the primary language is English, and it being founded by African Americans, it's like an easier transition than from going to not Nigeria, but just a country that isn't, their official language isn't, English, or the model isn't same as a Western civilization, sort of say. And to also add to your point too, Mike B, like, of course, you don't want to just pop up in any country and just say, hey, like, we want this, we want that, and let's just work. Like, no, definitely you have to come with some sense of unity, organization, skills. And that's the whole point with the BEIL. We're focusing on about connecting and not convincing, people of like mind that have the same agenda, that believe in Pan-Africanism, that believe in ownership. Why not come together, bring the skills that we can, and just rock out? And then the more people that we have, and then, you know, the more we collaborate with folks in Liberia, and which we are, you know, we've spoken to folks that had tech startups that, you know, are teaching children how to do computing, Salesforce. I mean, just getting CompTIA certifications. We even came across an official who explained, well, not even official, but someone who used to be an official, who explained the main problem there in Liberia is just the government, how corrupted it is. You know, they're not putting in the funding in Liberia, and that's not even just Liberian issue. That's just an African issue. A lot of corruption is going on where African leaders are just so self-centered and secure in the bag. And as shout outs to Hollop, he would say the jacuzzi effect. Once they hit that pinnacle of success, they don't want to help out anybody else. They're just chilling. And then they'll tell the regular citizens, like, you know, oh, things just take time. But really, you're the one that's supposed to administer and help out the people in your country. So
I think that could be, you know, not to downplay that, but in a certain sense, I think that can be advantageous for us, because if somebody is at a point where they're high on the hog and they feel like they got a lot of money, they have less of a reason to pocket watch you trying to get some money. So they might be much more willing to listen to you because they don't see you as a threat to them getting some money. From my talks to certain sisters on the continent that I've had, one of the things that I've heard consistently is that if you come over there with if you come over there, like, because I've met enough females from over there who talked about working in NGOs. There's a lot of foreigners, man, who set up NGOs over there, and that's how they get a foothold over there.
Right.
So if you set up an NGO helping children in the orphanages, or if you set up something where you build hostels, like from what I've been told, like there's a lot of money into doing things like that. So I think that you got to go through a lot of processes in the United States to get funding. In some of these other places in the world where there's more corruption, that might be more advantageous to get things done much more quickly if you can get in the door and actually have those conversations with those people. So it might not be as bad as a lot of people think it is.
Yeah, I don't.
No, it is. It is, Rob. It is bad. It's just a.
Yeah, I know it's bad
to
on
get
the surface.
No, I'm saying they don't have the same bureaucracy as the United States. It's just not. It's not all that. It's not all that mature. To put it kind of bluntly, it's not all that mature. Although there are people around to do things, but the process is so slow. Even to get something as simple as a visa, that process is slow. That, for whatever reason, they have not made the. So you know the lengthy and drawn out process to get a visa, man. I need a visa right now, and I can't even talk to anybody. I've been going through the Nigerian government for the last couple months, man. Such a pain in the ass. But the point that I'm making here is they operate differently. I mean, you know this, but a lot of people don't know that the governance structure here the bureaucracy here is effective. It's a pain in the ass, but it's effective. If you want to get something done, in the United States, it's going to get done at some point. Over there, you that may not always be the case. And so to the person's nationhood influence's point, when he I don't know if it's he or she, what makes this brother think USA wants what makes this brother think USA wants to see anything good for Black Africans? This is getting different. Trust in America. Well, that's the question, right? You don't have a nation backing you. And so how do you engage another nation when you got to deal with Russia? You got to deal with China. You got to deal with Vietnam and all these other countries coming into Africa, and they come in with the backing of their country. That's kind of the the $65,000 question. How are you going to engage? How are you going to compete for resources at that level? Because you don't have the resources that they have. They show up with millions of dollars, billions of dollars. They take over mines. They take over ports and infrastructure and things like that. African Americans are not competing at that level. That's we're playing JV, man. them boys is in the majors, and so we're not really operating at the same level. And we got to think about how we organize around something like this and how we actually engage it. Go ahead.
Well, since you're talking about the lack of capital, and I think you read this book before on Might Be of The Black Tax by Sean Rochester. You heard about this, brother?
I've heard about it.
Yeah, he wrote in detail about all this, and I think he wrote a second book in regards to strategies or somewhat solutions in regards to how to deal with the capital side of things, since we live in a country that's pretty much by deliberate undercapitaling us, underfunding us deliberately, because they know they can't give the same amount of income or loans like this to help get us ahead than everybody else. So obviously, I don't say this, but it look like in regards to the money aspect, I'm not sure most black men gonna have to make decisions. You're gonna have to affiliate a way to get that money somehow, because they're not gonna come give it to us. Because they know that if they give it to us to the right hands, to the right brothers, you would do something with it. You get me, Mike B?
Yeah, I want to make sure we give our closing thoughts. So I'll swing it to Underrated Mind, and then we'll go to Rael. Then we'll close out.
Oh, we're giving our last thoughts.
Yeah, I got to shut down.
Okay. I guess my last thoughts. I mean, technology is very important, and I know it seems scary because I've talked with friends of mine, and they seem frightened when it comes to AI and artificial intelligence, but I've always looked at it as a way to help you become more efficient and not just taking over. And it may seem scary because we may not, own that means of production. Like there's even an article that, talks about the possibility of racist robots. It's like them facing racism, which is very funny. And I actually have the article too from a Fast Company. But
okay,
if you want me to, I could post it because I don't want to just say
I think we covered it before.
Okay, cool.
But it's cool though.
But I guess my last point is the solution, I would say, to all this, it just boils down to land, infrastructure, and nationhood. Have to have the land and then the infrastructure to build on top of that land, to create the jobs, to create more opportunities for our people. And then obviously that's when the nationhood comes in, where people would gravitate towards that, and I definitely agree with you, what you said, Rael. Like when you come with a purpose of building and, trying to improve that country, gradually you'll see people, want to be a part of that wave and support it instead of having the wrong intentions of conquering or take over. Because that is definitely not what we're trying to do in Liberia. We want to enhance it and take Liberia to where it should be actually versus where it is now. But that's all my thoughts, and I appreciate this live. This was great talk.
Indeed, thank you.
Great stream, Mike. Salute to the panel, chat. Happy New Year to everybody. Without the technology, Booker T. Washington, coming from a slave experience, was able to become an international figure because of his vision. And I just think that it's important for men who want success are going to have a certain vision. I've always shown you respect Mike for touching down on the continent and establishing those contacts for us. To me, that was some bullshit. That was some diplomacy, something that all people must, if they want to do business, need to understand, because much business is very diplomatic. Um, you have to be able to sit down with your enemies and do business. Otherwise, you're just going to be constantly at war. Even the Catholic Church understood this when they sat down with Attila the Hun. And so, it's not about whether they like us, it's about whether they respect us. Because even if people don't like you, if they respect you, you can get some things done. And so we have to be much more serious about our outlook, our geopolitical outlook, not just citywide, national, statewide, national, but geopolitical outlook, because there are opportunities for us. We can't just see people, we have to see emerging markets that's coming aboard for us. And this is good for us, because if we can get a foothold in some of these places, we can really make some really impactful moves long term to continue the traditions of people like Booker T, who set down blueprints that we still can follow. Not everything, but much of the philosophy can still be utilized to this very day. I'll leave it with that.
Salute. Thanks for coming on, man. Chaos, you have any last words before we close out?
My last words, like always, network is always key for any future growth and success. If you're a young Black man and you're in college or whatever, try network with other potential like-minded young brothers in your circle, or older brothers. I mean, there should be no excuse at this point, as you know, Mike V. We should be using these devices, the technology, the social media, to our advantage to hopefully network and have the conversation and may build off of there to something more. Make no sense you're on here and you're just here just to, see pictures and do all the nonsense. I mean, it's much more useful than it seems, and we should make usefulness of this resource, because like I said, I learned something today that I didn't know. With your help, Mike V, and I appreciate it. And it's good to see you back doing these discussions, bro. We do miss you. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone else who participated in this in the chat room. And make sure you hit the like button as you exit out as well.